Hello, my fine feathered friends. It's time for another episode of the Mental Health Warriors podcast. First of all, if you want to support us, one of the best things you can do is share the show. So if you love the show in general or you love a particular episode, if you could share it on Facebook and all your social media, that would be wonderful because it helps us spread our message. And there's so many powerful lessons included in each episode that it helps us help more people. And that's what the mission of this show is all about. And if you want to support us over on Patreon, there's a couple of really cool options you can check out there. Just head over to patreon.com/mentalhealthwarriors and learn how we can help each other, because that, at the end of the day, is what it is all about. This conversation with Rhonda Smith was awesome. I had the pleasure of being on her podcast a while ago. She released it last month, and it was just this wide-ranging conversation that talked about, we talked about everything, and I loved it. And it really made me think about how I want to evolve the Mental Health Warriors podcast. And so I was privileged to have her on my show, and we did the exact same thing. We talked about everything from, Rhonda's struggles with mental health and addiction to suicide attempt to plant-based medicine to entrepreneurship to connecting with people, to finding your path. It was just a wide-ranging, super interesting discussion, the kind I really, really love to have, where there's no agenda and there's no formula or pre-formatted questions. It's just two people who are interested in exploring life, getting together, talking, and learning from one another. And I absolutely loved it. So I think you're going to love it too. There's so much in here, and you're going to learn a lot. And I think too, what's important is something that's really common in a lot of these podcast episodes, but it's someone who's been in the pretty much the darkest place you can be, and who's come out of that, and who's started an entirely new journey and is helping the world along the way. And these are the stories I love. These are stories I love creating a space for people to tell, and these are the storytellers that I love connecting with. So I'm sure you'll enjoy this episode a great. Rhonda is a life architect and podcaster. She's the founder of Cosmic Smith and Cosmic Smith Radio. And she says that one will keep hitting bottom until they finally break into 1,000 little pieces. From this place comes the birth of the true self. Rhonda's journey is one of incredible tragedy to immense triumph. Her greatest learning has come from the deepest shadows within. And once she stopped running from the shadows, they become her greatest teacher. Oh boy, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? A challenging life is a symptom of trauma. The trauma must be felt for healing to occur. The only way out is through. Her journey is one of great self-betrayal. Her greatest medicine has been learning to be herself and to bravely walk the unique path that she has been given. The path is one of incredible truth and great mystery. Rhonda is the founder of Cosmic Smith Radio. This unique show shares alternative paths to healing, acceptance, and wholeness. Stop projecting who you think you are supposed to be and share the gifts that only you can share. The time is now to remember who we have always been. It is time to walk in truth. You hear that? It is time to walk in truth, you crazy motherfuckers. So listen, enjoy this episode. You are going to love it. Rhonda's an incredible human being, and man, I love, love, love talking to her. So enjoy the show, and we will see you on the other side.
Warriors are not born. Warriors are forged in the crucible of adversity. Warriors without fear are warriors without courage. We are men, destroying stigma and stereotypes. We are a band of brothers, because in brotherhood there is strength. Our weapons are strength, empathy, and honesty. We are mental health warriors, and this is our voice.
All right, Rhonda, welcome to the Mental Health Warriors podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I feel like we're going to have some amazing things to talk about because it hasn't been easy getting us here.
Yeah, no kidding. And just for some inside baseball for people, this has been a bit of a cluster getting to this point. So technical difficulties, my scheduling patheticness, and but you persevered through it all, and here we are.
Here we are. I think everything happens when it's supposed to. So
Yeah, me too. So interesting. We were talking about your podcast before we started recording. And, so you were talking about going into season 2, like I never really considered the idea of doing seasons. So what are the pros and cons of that?
I mean, if you start amping up and you start having some preparation about like, where you're headed, I'm going to have this last year has really been about a big year of healing, which has obviously been my own journey and the things that I've discovered and found, which is I want to share. But what do I want to talk about this next year? Like, what do I want to help people with or support people with? And I tend to do what's going on in my own life. So a lot of self-love and tantra and a lot of really beautiful things about relationships and really understanding our own patterns and behavior in relationships. So I think I'm really going to focus, and I'm not sure yet, but I think this is more about love and self-love and what really love is. So,
cool.
Yeah. So I'm excited.
Yeah. So let's talk about relationships, because I think that's, my wife and I have really been making an effort to be more intentional. Right. So, and it's interesting how we're doing that. I mean, we've always been really open and talked a lot, but I think it's really easy to get in autopilot mode, right? And so we've been doing things like, I think the original premise was a rings chat in the morning, but we started calling it wings. So like the W's, who am I going to be today? I is for intention. What are my intentions for today? N is what do I need from you? G is what am I grateful for? And S is someday I'd like to with, whatever with you. And it's a really nice way to start the day, but I think strong relationships don't happen by accident. They take intention, and they take being vulnerable, and they take communicating all the time. So yeah, it's been really cool.
Well, that's beautiful. And I think taking that a step further for each person, like don't, use your wings, but like make it your own. And I think that's what everybody else does, is that we just regurgitate. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful part of the relationship is that we're in relationship with everything. We're in relationships with water. Water has consciousness. When we start looking at things like we're in relationship all the time, how do I want to show up in this? And it doesn't mean you have to be happy, or it doesn't mean you have to like put on a mask. It means like, really, how do you want to show up, and how do you want to make this person feel? How do you want to make yourself feel? And for me, it's really about the internal, am I doing this because it makes me feel good and I feel worth or value, which definitely needs to be looked at, because we have to find that and cultivate that within ourselves, and that self-love piece. I always have people, and I've done this on other podcasts, but touch your face.
Sorry.
Yeah. And your hands get to touch your face, but think about how lonely it must be that your face never gets to touch your hands. And when we start being in relationship with ourselves this way, or holding our hand in the morning, like when we start having a love affair with our greatest lover, which is ourselves, like then how do we show up in relationships? And then how do we show up in everything? And it's really fascinating, because we've lost such connection with the body, and we look at it like a mechanical thing that just kind of gets us through. Well, that's like everything you're looking for externally is found within. And then when you show up in relationship, then two whole people can come together in love and be in love and wholeness. So
I love that.
Yeah.
It's interesting about the connection with the body, because I had this experience last week where a friend of mine was killed in a car crash. And so I went to her memorial service on Friday night, and it was really interesting, because as I'm driving there, I started getting super anxious and I realized I was trying to understand why I was feeling that way. And I came up with, other than obviously it's an unpleasant experience, that it was the first time I'd been in a funeral home since Cindy, my first wife's death. And I think that was part of it. And I think it was remembering what it was like to be on the other side of that, like from the family point of view. And just thinking about how weird the way we do funerals is. Like, it's like she knew there's hundreds of people there, and I'm looking at her family, and it's just like this nonstop parade of people. And I'm like, how is this compassionate for anybody? Like, it's the people that are suffering the most are the ones that are most on display and so it's all of that. And then when I got home, I was really, really worked up. And, I don't normally say that. I don't normally feel like ungrounded, but this time, and I wasn't even really sure what that meant, except this time I knew that that's what I was feeling. And it was really interesting, because I'm talking to my wife about it. It was about probably 10:30 by the time I got home, 10:30 at night. And I was like pacing around the bedroom, trying to articulate my feelings. But what I did was I found myself standing up against the wall, like, and actually leaning my head back against the wall. And just that connection with something solid, you know what I mean? Like, was very important to me in that moment. And anyways, it was really interesting because I don't remember ever having felt that way before, you know, and it just felt, I guess, a sense of connection with something that was rock solid. You know what I mean?
Well, and having something have your back.
Yeah, right.
So,
I never thought about it that way either, actually. Yeah.
I mean, like having something, having support, having something to lean on, having something, you know, to support ourselves with. And, you know, we do it subconsciously all the time. You know, people find it rude when we cross our arms, but, you know, our solar plexus chakra, right below the breasts, above the belly button, is our energy center. You're pulling in energy from other people, and we're pushing out energy all the time. And people they're not conscious of their energy. And you are getting ready to go into an energetically challenging situation that triggers all those feelings in you. I mean, funeral and death and grief and loss is a really big thing that we avoid talking about. And when we naturally just cover with our hands over that spot, or we fold our arms, we're just protecting ourselves. We're just naturally protecting the energy center of the body. So I don't find it to be rude. And, you know, I have a real big curiosity with death. And I do conscious conversation cafe calls like once a month, where a bunch of people get on Zoom and we talk about different things that are not things that we talk about. And we did a call about death and dying. And it was so fascinating to get on a call and actually have people, and, you know, no one can interrupt you. No one can tell you you're wrong. It's just a space to freely speak. And no one on that call had ever talked about like their fears about death and what it was going to be like. And I'm getting ready to do one on love. And it's like, we don't get to really talk about, you know, I'm afraid to show up in love because I've been hurt. And now I don't know how to show up and trust that I'm going to be loved wholly because I've been hurt so many times. And it's like that memory in the body. I could go on and on. I just started seeing a Rolfer. Yeah. And it's amazing. I didn't really even know what Rolfing was. So Rolfing works with the connective tissue in the body. So the fascia and the ligaments. And essentially we have memory stored in this fascia. We also have trauma stored in the fascia. And I'm not going to lie, it doesn't feel good. It's not like a deep tissue massage. It can be actually painful as they move through the body and they're releasing the trauma of this stored memory in us and the stored fear in us. And I've only done one session, but the integration, I have another session Saturday. Once you agree to 1, you have to agree like to 7, I think. But the release of what I'm releasing from my body right now that I didn't even know I was walking around with, that stored memory, that stored trauma of things. I mean, it's, for me, there's no stone left unturned. Like, I'm going to figure out a way to just keep clearing the crystal, as they call it in Rolfing, but to get myself into a space from what's it going to be like when I'm no longer the wounded healer? What am I going to be like when I show up and I can just be present and be without this expectation of being more, or not feeling enough love, or, you know, having to go through grief, or like taking on other people's energy. Like, and I think that's really the goal, is for us all just to be in a space of just being clear and being able to be with pain or someone else's grief and not have to take it on as our own.
So I've never heard of Rolfing before. So is it a type of, it's obviously physical touch, but is it a type of massage of some sort?
It's body work. So this
Okay.
woman, I think her name was Ida Rolf, and I want to say it was anywhere from like the 40s to the 50s. She developed this practice, and it's very scientific. Like, it's not this woo-woo, all just energy stuff. It's about getting the body in a state where it's no longer resistant to gravity. So it's like repositioning the way the shoulders hold strength. Like the first session, he worked on my chest, and he's like, you can't take in very much air. So it's like, so the first session is like being in a wetsuit that's too tight for you. And we all walk around in wetsuits that are too tight for us. And he basically gives you a little more space. So we worked on the chest, and I was sore for a good week afterward. I couldn't believe the capacity to take in more air in every breath. And like, you know, I'm always looking for like deep, profound, like shifting. Well, he simply made it so I could breathe better. To think about how that affects everything. Yeah, it affects everything. So it's an amazing, beautiful practice. I definitely recommend people checking it out and finding somebody that has a lot of experience with it. But it's just one more way without having to do, I mean, it's deep work, but it's, you know, it's not psychedelic work. It's not having to go through something. I mean, it's just, it's helping the body function properly.
You know, it's interesting. You talk about the wounded healer, and it's really, that's really interesting, because it's tough to you kind of get wrapped up in this, I guess this persona, right? Like, this is who I am, you know what I mean? And moving past that is, because I found that with myself too. Like, who am I? What's the message? I was talking to somebody about this morning, about how I noticed that over time, the things I talk about are different all the time, like as I evolve as a person. But I think there is some aspect of the wounded healer. And I'll be honest, when I'm talking about it, sometimes I think, I feel like what I'm saying is bullshit, because I have this persona and I don't know if I'm afraid to distance myself from it. I'm always really thinking about that, right? Like, because I mean, I don't know that that's who I want to be. I don't know if
It's who you know how to be.
Yeah, right.
Well, because all of our lives we've been taught we're not enough. We need to achieve more. Success looks like this. You need to wear this. If you don't have love, it doesn't look like this. And like all of these things, like, what if I told you today you're absolutely perfect and you didn't have to do anything different? And then like, okay, so accepting myself, like, so, and I go through depression and I go through anxiety. It's, I'm very open about the fact that I've tried to kill myself and all of these things. But for me, I had a trigger, which was love and not feeling that I was receiving love. But so I just went through a couple of days of funk and deepness and like being able to understand, like, what are you here to teach me? And it taught me something great. And for me, I don't need to change that. And it doesn't make it wrong. And it doesn't make it like, okay, so now I'm better. Like, it's me, it's part of me. So if I can accept that, like, I'm going to go through peaks and valleys in my life. That's just naturally how my body flows. And do I have to do that? I don't know. I mean, I'm not maybe at that place of consciousness where, you don't have to choose that for yourself. And it seems like I can have enough tools to move myself through things nicely. But for some of us, I think that there's a really dark realm that we're able to exist in comfortably. And I think that's what helps us support other people that are going through darkness. So I think there's no coincidence in that. But it's like, Rhonda, what if you're just enough today? Like, what if your actions and whatever you did was just simply enough? You didn't have to feel guilt, and you didn't have to feel like I didn't get enough done, or, I didn't get my workout in, or I didn't drink enough water. Like, what if it was just okay? And I'm not saying like just be in this complacent place where we don't strive to be more. We always want to achieve more, but what kind of things would we achieve, and what would we create from a place of being whole?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there's part of me that I think about this quite a bit. And I think, God, logically, I know this isn't true, but I feel like if I don't continually hold myself accountable to a higher standard, I'm just going to be a fuck, right? Like, I'm not going to get out of bed. You know what I mean? Like so I feel
but
like.
Is that true?
Probably not. It's probably not, right? I'm sure it's not true. Like, I've never been that person, right? So, but it's this really ingrained pattern of like negative reinforcement in some way. Like, not here's what I did today and it's enough, but here's the things where I fell short today. I'm going to do better tomorrow, and I think I'm getting better at that, but it's a challenging thing to overcome.
When's the last day you laid in bed and didn't get up?
I then didn't get up, probably never, but I had a day. My wife calls it my man period. So I had about a day a month where, like, last month, that Chicago popcorn, like, you got the caramel and the salty. I freaking ate, like, I barely got out of bed and I ate an entire bag of that. Like, I was just and I had mixed feelings about it, because on one hand I felt guilt about it, but on the other hand, I know that there's learning here, right? And just be able to unplug and just lay around and if I am able to remove the judgment from it, it's an important thing to do. It's recharging, it's reflective, it's inward looking, you get to eat lots of popcorn,
right?
Like
Totally. Well, I was just at the One Life Fully Lived conference, and for those of you who don't know about One Life Fully Lived, it's this amazing nonprofit that helps people realize their dreams, and the conferences are super affordable, and they have an amazing community online, One Life community, that really helped. I'm going to give them a plug. Helped me my life. Well, I was just at the One Life conference this weekend. I was in more of a supporting role. I do an indigenous medicine called Combo. Combo is a frog venom that once put on the body, the goal is to get you to purge. And I worked on quite a few people this weekend, and I worked on people that had amazingly challenging trauma, severe levels of rape and kidnapping, and people who have had severe heroin addiction, and all of these pieces, definitely mental health pieces there, and in the sense of like how they're trying to deal with stuff. And I was exhausted, like to an incredible degree this time. And I started to understand my own energy. So I know like when I'm going to go to a 5-day conference or I'm going to be at a conference for several days, I'm going to schedule nothing into my week afterward. So taking a couple of days to do nothing and not feel guilty about it and creating that for myself. And I have a coach that's been in my life, super, super successful hedge fund guy. And he's like, just learning your patterns. You like, once you have a launch or you take on clients or you do something, you need to schedule like a week after to have nothing to do. And it's what my body needs. So rather than look at it like, oh, I'm not doing enough and then feeling guilty. And it's like, I'm just a big loser, which I think I've heard somebody else on this podcast say before.
Mm-hmm.
We're not losers.
Mm-hmm.
That is all masculine bullshit programming. Like
Totally.
We all need rest and we all need days just to like allow ourselves to be. That's how we receive mystery. Like when we're always in this perpetual state of accomplishing and doing, it doesn't leave a lot of room for mystery and for knowing and for wisdom to kind of show up and come in. And an hour in the morning is great if you do meditation, or 20 minutes. I get that, but like it's more because you're again sitting down creating something. Like allowing those things to come in has been like where the real magic happens for me. Anyway.
Interesting. Yeah. I even find that even if I'm feeling anxious, like like the other day when I came home from the funeral, actually, so then I got in bed and I was talking to my wife and I was really analytical about the whole thing, right? And I'm saying, okay, I don't know what to do right now. Because I don't know if I should like allow myself to just fully experience this moment, or if I should like acknowledge that I am not my thoughts and blah, blah, blah. And I'm actually stressing myself out, trying to determine, okay, I'm a coach. I should know what to do in this situation. And I'm actually increasing my level of stress because I'm not making a choice. And my wife goes, like, just choose one of those, like, for example. And like, if it feels good, do that. And if it doesn't feel good, make a different choice. Like, it's not like you're not making a lifetime contract here. You know what I mean? So, that was very liberating for me. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to be here right now and experience it because I think I need to. Right. And it was really helpful.
I love your vulnerability. We need more men to be vulnerable as they go through these things. And I know that's what your whole message and mission is about. But I was actually going to reach out to you. And then I got this like knowing, like, you're good. Your wife is super supportive and you have what you need and you don't need someone else to, because I was just going to say, hey, dude, like lay on the bed and lay in it. Yeah. It's a good feeling.
Maybe you just by thinking it, you reached out because that's what I did. So
yeah. Well, and I was like, he's got it. Like he already knows what to do, but like, and we all have that tendency to say, hey, you should try this or try this. It's like, what to do. And it's like, it's so much easier to take an action or change your thought process or use a tool or whatever than it is just to feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you a question. How important is it to you to tell your backstory?
Well, it's been everything. It's been how I show up. It's been what I tell people when I meet them. It's been like, this is who I've been and overcome. And then I did a podcast with a really, really good friend and we had an amazing conversation and I listened to it and I was like, yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I'm going to tell the story anymore. Like, you can know my story. And if you want to ask me questions about it, that's great. But like, I get to be me now. Like, I'm doing amazing things now.
Yeah.
And I have incredible wisdom now. And it was like something about me was really holding on to, I need people to know this story about me, of what I've overcome and what I've done and who I was and like what I've been through and like, okay, well, who really needs to hear that story? I guess I needed to keep hearing it over and over and over and over again. And it's an important story to share. And I'm starting to write my book and, I share it very actively on my own podcast. Plug my podcast, Cosmic Smith Radio. Come check us out. It's a great podcast. And yeah, it's like, who am I then? Who do I show up as today? And it's funny because I don't really need to say anything. Mm-hmm. And that's the interesting part. So it's like learning how to show up and not needing to tell people who I am, just listening. And then like what happens from that? And the conversations and the connections I'm making are so much different because I was attracting me. And that's okay. And that's great. But like, I usually have a tendency to work with people that consider themselves to be in a deeper level in the path and they're interested in doing more. And it's like, I kept attracting people who were at the beginning of the journey. Well, there's a lot of work that's required at the beginning of the journey and people don't want to necessarily do that work. Like for me, and I think for you as well, it's been a sliver in the brain. Like I had no choice but to figure out why and to go into the depths of incredible healing through ayahuasca and plant medicine, all these things. And it's like, if you want to come work with me, I just assume that's the path you want. And I find that most people want to quit, and most people do quit. And I was getting really frustrated with them. And it's like, not everybody is going to want to do that level of work. So if I quit showing up in that, and I just get to show up as me, like the people that are coming in are very interesting because they're so ready for like what conversations I'm ready to have and for what conversations I'm ready to participate in and listen to. So yeah, it's interesting. It really, our external world is an exact mirroring reflection of what's going on inside of us. What about you?
Well, so interestingly, I was thinking, because when we started filming this podcast, the last time I got you to tell your story, and it's funny, I've become less, I don't want to say I've become less interested in people's origin stories. It's like, I'm much more curious about who you are now and where you're going. Right. And so but I feel like that too. Sometimes I find myself getting away. Like, so when I used to talk in front of a group, what I used to do was share my story, basically. And now I still do that, but I do it less, and it's much more focused on what I've learned as a result of the journey I've been on, right? So it's some storytelling, but more teaching, I feel like, as far as rather than just storytelling. Because I mean, you tell the same fucking story 50,000 times, and you're like, okay, I'm more than this story. Like I'm much more than this story, right? And just the same words. Like I'd be on a podcast, and I could do it basically asleep, like tell my story like asleep. And I'm like, there's something here. I'm telling this. Why am I in a situation where I'm telling the story so many times? Like it's, and that's been a journey, is to continue to unpack the lessons I've learned along the way and try to figure out a compelling way to share them, I guess. So, yeah. So I was debating whether we can include the short version of your story.
I can definitely share my story. But it's interesting. What I found is the last, few years, I've really had a magnifying glass on this one part of my story. Mm-hmm. And it was a really hard part. Don't get me wrong. I ended up becoming a junkie after having great success. I wasn't living in my truth in anything, and I was living way above my means, and I was married to somebody who there was no intimacy or love. It was just friendship, and really forced in a really hard way to look at myself, and became a drug addict and tried to kill myself a couple of times, all of those pieces. But like, I've been holding a magnifying glass to that part of the story. Well, when you step back to gain perspective, the whole story, my whole life is quite interesting. And there's been so much incredible change and growth and grief and love and betrayal, self-betrayal, all of these things that have happened the whole time. And I was really focusing on this one part that was the catalyst, I guess, of like the change, but I was really missing out on all the other pieces. So I don't even know where you want me to begin. I kind of just gave a little brief description, but for me, I think
that's great.
Yeah, for me, it was like getting to a point where I was almost homeless and could not make the decisions for myself that would save myself, and wouldn't come home to my family to heal. And like, I would have rather have died in some hotel room with no money than faced myself and faced my truth. And I screamed into a mirror one night for God or source, nature, whatever you relate with, to help me not think, because I never really had a connection. And the next morning I woke up with oneness, and I woke up with this different knowing, and I threw my drugs in a garbage can. And I, for the first time in my life, made a decision to do what was right for myself. And if I had known what was ahead of me, there's no way that I would have ever done it. But obviously I was being shown very little snippets of like what I needed to do. But really, it's about facing ourselves, facing our truth. Like this woman, so I've had really super sexual, risque parts of me. Like I love, revealing clothes and dark makeup, and I lived in Vegas, and I loved like all of that craziness. And then I would come back into life, and then I would be this like, I worked for a huge financial institution, a bank. And they're like, you don't cuss and you don't drink. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it was like these two black and white versions of myself, because I never figured out how to bring them all together. And it's like, who are we when we're dancing alone home in our underwear, or we're naked and we're crazy and we're singing at the top of our lungs, not caring who listens. And that's who I wanted to be all the time. And that's really what the work is that I do. And like this whole thing is like, I don't care who you think other people want you to be. If you continually try and be that person, you're going to feel empty and you're going to need substance, or you're going to have mental health issues. I mean, a lot of my depression has been because I was trying to be something that I wasn't, trying to fit into something that I was never meant to fit into. And, you know, I'm not happy all the time. I'm not fucking awesome every day. And that's okay too. You know? Yeah. So
just want to say for the audience, this is actually a video call. We don't do it on Skype very much. So we're talking about racy clothes. I want you guys to know that Rhonda is dressed very classy and I am in women's lingerie right now. Okay. So let's full disclosure here. We're totally transparent.
You're so funny. I like that pink lacy on you.
So that's interesting you talk about choices, because I've often thought back to like my kind of moment where I stopped drinking, and I've really tried to analyze that, and I've come up with, I have no idea why in that moment, I don't think I know why in that moment I was able to have that sense of clarity. Like, what was it about that moment? Like I think it was just a combination of a whole bunch of different factors. Like enough time had passed since my wife's death. You know, my daughter had told me she was disappointed in me. I was already hating myself for what I was doing. I don't know. I just feel like it was this complicated mix of stuff that allowed me to have this clarity. Like, have you ever figured out, like really figured out what it was in that moment that allowed you to have that sense of clarity? Like, is it repeatable? You know what I mean?
It's so fun. Well, yeah, because I'm constantly forced. Like, I don't just do work and then have reprieve anymore. Like, I'm doing the work every day, all the time. Like, it's just perpetual for me. But one of my great healers, I had some energy work done yesterday, and he gave me this analogy, and it's so perfect for what we're talking about. But it's like, if we just have a wheel with no spokes, you know, it's not strong enough to carry any weight. It can go around on its own, right? But like, it's not going to carry the weight to move anything forward. So we need spokes. We need substance. We need sustainability. We need some structure. And so what if it wasn't just that one thing? What if like all the pieces finally together to make the wheel strong enough to move us forward? So your daughter was like the last spoke in that wheel to be it strong enough. And I'm a firm believer in the flick. We need to flick each other. And that means like sometimes, hey, you know, Jason, you're not doing this, and it's whatever in your life. And I just need you to know it, and saying in a way that's with kindness and compassion, but saying to each other, right? And like, we don't say these little things to each other because it makes us uncomfortable. And that's really what it's about, is we don't speak our truth because it's uncomfortable for us. So when we say these things and they all come together, and your daughter was brave enough, I think that you said at the age of 9, to say, I'm really disappointed in you, Daddy. And for her to have that perspective, and for her to gain that, was like the last little flick you needed to move in here. So I have been on the journey of like, it's only been this, okay, now that I know this one thing, this has been it. Okay, now I know this one thing, and that's definitely the answer. And like, what if it isn't? What if it's all of it together? And I don't believe it's a coincidence. And I don't believe, like, I believe this is all so strategically like synced out to the moment of me moving my hand right now and talking about, like, I think there's such a greater knowledge and presence here on earth and for us than we can even fathom. So I think it was just the time it was meant to happen.
Yeah.
Because we're there.
Yeah. And I think that's it, because my initial response, like my initial feeling as I sort of understood it, was to try to figure it out so I could teach other people how to have this magical miracle moment too. And after a while, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how to do that. I don't even know if there's, you know what I mean? So I think you're right. It was a very unique personal experience that happened when it was supposed to happen in my life, and it doesn't, not anybody else's. But one thing I'm really have been thinking a lot about lately, and I'd love your point of view, is I'm going to use my sister-in-law as an example here, because I know she doesn't listen to the podcast. So
my family doesn't listen either.
Yeah. And so I'm really thinking about choice, right? And how in her situation, like, you know, my brother's kind of a dick, and he doesn't listen to the podcast either, but he's can be quite a dick. And so, and she's super unhealthy. Like, she's, you know, she's really, really struggling. And, you know, part of it is a relationship. Like, she's like in her early 40s, and it's not good. and it's depression and stress and horrible self-esteem and not, non-supportive marriage and all this stuff. And I look at her and kind of like in a way where I looked at myself, where when I was drinking really heavily, we had this belief that, just make a different choice, just make better choices, get your shit together and make better choices. And I think back to when I was drinking, or I look at her and her situation, and I'm like, I'm not clear how much capacity there is to make choices when you're hurting that badly. But on the flip side, we're all responsible for our own lives ultimately, right? And it's, I don't know I don't know what I'm thinking. Like, I'm not trying to absolve people of their choices. Maybe it's just a more compassionate way of looking at it. But if you don't have any tools, and how do you do that? I don't know.
Well, and a step before that, and even in my own self, I did not have the ability to make a better choice for myself.
Right.
You don't know what you don't know until you know. And we don't get to decide when people, you can tell a person over and over and over again, this is what you need to do. Those are assholes, right? They ask and then they don't take your advice and they ask and they don't take your advice, right? But essentially, until the consciousness happens within them, or it's the time, or they make a different choice for themselves, that doesn't get clicked on. And we are so chemically treated with fluoride and chloride and all of the things in food, and it's meant to keep us our bodies shut down. So then we need medicine, and then we get cancer. It's all business, right? It's it's all a business. So you don't know what you don't know until you know. And until she picks herself up with her own bootstraps, and just like I had to, my family saving me all of those times and coming in, that never did me any favors. It just prolonged the inevitable until it got so bad, I finally had to do it myself. And I agree with you. When you don't have the capacity and you're feeling so much pain because you don't have the tools to choose love and to simply say, this darkness isn't mine. Or, now it's so easy for me, where my whole life I was tormented with in the nighttime or these things. And it's until you have more room, the first thing I did was remove toxins and chemicals from my life, and all of my food and my drinks and my water and all of that. And that one thing, I was okay, this is it. And that's that whole healer's mentality is, this will be the thing. This will be the thing. This will be the thing. And it's not. And, 5 years later, I'm still doing things to bring more, but it left enough room in my body to make different choices for myself. So that one thing, then adding a little bit of exercise in, and then working on that piece. And for me, it was really one step at a time of just chiseling away. You're whole inside. You're perfect. You're beautiful inside. And the absolute and most amazing version of you is inside. It's just we're covered in all this stone. And we have to chip it away. And we have to remember what we've always been. And until we can choose that for ourselves and do what's hard. I had to just one of my most incredible relationships in my life, I'm having to leave because it doesn't suit me. And it's not fucking easy.
Yeah.
It hurts. I'm sad. I'm sad about the potential of the healing we could have done. I'm sad about all of these things, and he doesn't listen, so I can barely talk about it. But he's my best friend, and it's not it's not working for me. It's making me sick. And you have to do what's hard. And that's the thing is, everybody is sold, here's a diet in a box, here's a pill in a box to make you thin, this will make you happy, just do this. And it's that's not how it works.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's, I think for me, what I've started doing is, and I talk to people about this, and some people have a hard time wrapping their head around that, but the way I look at myself, but mostly the way I look at other people, is I just try to believe that they're doing the best that they can in the moment, right? Because I kind of feel like if they could do better, they would. And it doesn't mean that it's approval of behavior. It's not that. It's just acknowledging that they're doing the best they can, and people do things that make sense to them for some reason. So you might look at somebody who's abusing drugs, or if I look at Cindy and all the behavior that was irrational, when she was completely emotionally dysregulated, but it made sense to her. She was abusing alcohol because she was trying to either quiet her mind, or, you know what I mean? And if you look at it that way, you realize that there are so many different truths, and we all have our own. And it's, I don't know, for me, it's a much more curious and compassionate way of looking at the world. I kind of think that I posted something on Facebook this morning, but like, I really feel like curiosity, genuine curiosity is almost in some ways the opposite of judgment, because if I want to know everything about you, if I think you're an idiot, I don't want to know anything about you. You know what I mean? But if I genuinely am curious about who you are and where you came from and why you think the way you do, I feel like approaching things from that place tends to make our interactions a lot less judgmental with one another.
Well, and everybody's beliefs are their own. And I very much value that you feel the way you do about religion or God or whatever. But like for me, my experience, my spirituality is about thinking that source energy is within all of us. You and I have the same source energy. That's what gives us soul. And you're just here in a different vessel to have a different experience. And source is here to express and to experience everything through all of us. So when you look at it that way and you're like, oh, okay, well, I don't agree with you, but that's your truth. And I just did a show on this, like, what is truth? There's over 7.5 billion people on the planet. There are over 7.5 billion truths because it's not meant to all be the same. In our own experiences, like there's always, like, even if it's 0.00001 of a difference in perspective, it's there. And it's that different thing. And it's like, when you understand, oh, this is really what you believe is right. And although and whatever right is, right, whatever wrong is, like, who determined that?
Right.
Who decided, like, these are the things that are right or wrong, right? Like, so when you start questioning those things and you have discernment, you're like, oh, okay, well, how do I really feel about it? So then I agree, though, it's fascinating when we can stop being in judgment and just start being in acceptance. And I know, as a coach, like with your sister-in-law, like, she has to come to it on her own, and you can do whatever you can, but like blatantly telling her anything, she's not going to hear. And she'll never hear it from you or her family. Like, that doesn't seem to work that way. She'll read some article or she'll read something that will, like, poof. Yeah. It's like, I've been telling you that for 4 years, fucker. And now you read some article and now it makes sense. But it, and then again, we get to be human, but. Yeah. And maybe, honestly, maybe it's seed planting, right? Instead of opinion changing, it's, I'm working on a talk right now for high school kids. Because what I want them to understand is, like, we change the world in every interaction that we have, right? Like, and it's, I think so often if you, I don't know, if you look at somebody and you say, what I always say, like, I've struggled too. And if you ever want to talk to me, I won't judge you. It doesn't mean that somebody will talk to you. It doesn't, but it changed the world, like, in some small way. And I think so often we look at the idea of making a contribution or leaving a legacy or whatever as this big giant thing for that important people do, and it's like, yeah, but everything was built one Lego block at a time, and I want people to, especially kids, I want them to understand that, God, every moment that you have when you interact with, even yourself, but interact with somebody else, it's an opportunity to change them forever. You'll both be changed forever as a result of every interaction, right? And it's a question of bringing some intention and consciousness and compassion to it. But I think as teenagers, I remember teenagers, you feel fucking helpless. You know what I mean? You have no power. Everybody's telling you what to do. You're a mistake machine, basically, right? But I want people to see it, especially at that age, that they're almost infinitely powerful. Well, when you can embrace the failed, like, I failed. Yeah. And rather than looking at it like, oh my God, I failed, and now I have to go crawl in a hole and all of these things, especially for young people, I totally agree and get that. It's fascinating to watch people's minds when we are so focused about there. And we all say it all the time. There is no there. There's no getting there. It's like, oh, this isn't what I thought this was going to feel like. And then life just keeps moving. Right. It's about this moment. Like, rather than thinking about what we have to do today and stuff, like, life and living and the juiciness of, like, truth and transformation is in this moment right now with you and I, for me. And the conversation we get to embrace and share. And, like, if we start being, John Vroman talks about being moment makers, and, like, we get to be in the moment, and then we get to be in the moment, and then we get to be in the moment, and we're not focused on, it's great that you have to know where you're headed, but then you let go. And then you're like, okay, now how, like, being in the creation of it rather than being in the, okay, in 3 weeks when this part's over, it's going to be better. Like, no. And if you're not enjoying it and you're not having fun with it and you're not being silly, like, I'm a big fan of JP Sears. He was on my show and he just started an awesome mastermind group. There's like 1,000 people in it. And he's trying to make it all more fun.
Mm-hmm.
To do this work and to share our messages and stuff with more fun. It's like, when's the last time you did a goofy video to share your message about mental health? Don't you think it would be like so much more interesting to have people be like, oh, that was funny?
I'm a funny fucking person too. That's
I
a great
know,
point, right?
Like delivering really hard content, because like what we offer is not easy.
Yeah.
It's a whole, like, what if we did it with some fun? Don't you think more people would be more receptive?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna do something hard, but I get to giggle. Okay, totally, I'm in.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And that's very bizarre that I never really thought about that, because it's funny because you make all these videos and stuff. And I mean, the video I made about how to take a proper shit, like I got like 4,000 people watch that in like 2 days, and I was like, God, maybe I should do all my videos squatting in proper shitting position. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Well, I mean, there's something to that. And it's like, I guess like what people need, because it's all so serious all the time, is some fun.
Yeah. No, I think
we can do all of this with like more lightheartedness and more humor. And there's a reason, like, pay attention to those things. 4,000 views as opposed to 200 because you're delivering really hard content.
Yeah. Interesting. Maybe I should start having a comedy segment where I could just like every Thursday release an episode where I hone my stand-up routine.
Well, I mean, and that's the whole thing. I think stand-up is like the most challenging profession.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and when you can master that, but like, I'm funny too. And like, I really like to be funny, and I'm super dorky, and I'm all of those things, but like, I don't get to show that very much. It's like, I need to be this serious, or I need to be like this way, or I need to do whatever. There's enough people out there doing that. Like, it's good. Like, why don't I do like, who am I? Like, who am I really? And that's fun. And like, that's how we do it. That's how we deliver and offer really challenging transformation in a way that isn't so hard to do.
That's super interesting. I'm going to really reflect on that, because I don't know that it's been intentional, but I kind of feel like I've been holding myself back a little bit there, because I'm like a total dork, like almost all the time. So, it's funny. I want to talk a little bit about psychedelics, because I'm so fascinated by this. And it's funny, I was giving this talk to a bunch of first responders, and it was this program where it's for first responders and veterans dealing with PTSD. But it's very, as crazy as this sounds, it's one of the few like holistic programs, like where they look at, fitness and nutrition and, like all that human connection, like all that kind of stuff, not just medication. And so I'm talking to this lady, and she's like, we want to, like the lady that founded it. And she's like, oh yeah, and we want to do all these things and, make a really holistic approach. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so fucking into that. Like, I mean, I want to like, I'm feeling really called to do ayahuasca right now. And she's like, what's that? It's a psychedelic plant from the rainforest. And she's like, you're fucked. Like, what are you talking about? Right. And it's funny how her holistic idea, and which is fine, has a specific scope around it. But there's so much more than that too, and it's interesting how we all, I don't know,
well, learning to sculpt that conversation. So you can say, so how, like, okay, so in all living beings, there's something called DMT, and you can say dimethyltryptamine, and it's in blades of grass, it's in birds, it's in us, and it's the thing that connects us all as one. And they have this plant medicine in the jungle in Peru, where you mix this plant and the root of a tree together in this brew, and you drink it, and it takes you into that consciousness. Now, the word psychedelic has had the most incredible propaganda program around it.
Oh yeah.
Make it right, to make it what it is. But when you present it in a way to anybody that's a little bit softer, then it's exactly the truth of it. And it actually might get them interested. But, so you have to be the cosmic gardener. You have to plant the seeds. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or you don't. And you can just say, yeah, I'm ready to go do like psychotropic drugs, and I'm ready. And they're not drugs, they're plant medicines, but I'm ready to, however you decide to say it. And it's been interesting. And it was like, I think it was my third ayahuasca ceremony where I was finally like, I'm going to talk about this online. And that was also when I made the pivotal decision to use fuck in my business. And like, I did a big, huge meme, and it was like, fuck. Yes, I'm choosing to use this word in my business. And it was like really stepping into myself, because I had all these coaches who were like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, well, I'm going to. Yeah. So adding it, and these medicines are the answer to the healing of the earth for many. And there are many that, have enough issue with psychiatrically wise, is that a word? That, yeah, it's new. That would need, I'm fine with making up new words. That, would really, it might not be the best for them because it's going to have them feel things, but there's like lots of other things. But for a huge group of people, this is the healing of the earth. I mean, I moved my addiction spirit. Now that's going to sound crazy to people. Like I was a meth addict for 4.5 years, and I don't consider myself an addict. So I don't have that mentality like for the rest of my life that I'm a recovering addict. So I believe addiction and weight and all of the things, numb, food, all of the things we do, sex, is just a symptom of something. So when I went to Peru this last summer, I got all the answers to all my questions. And I'm like sitting there on the floor of this huge temple in Peru, and we just got done with this crazy training, and I'm like, now what? And I'm like looking around, and I'm like, nothing's different. There wasn't like this golden illuminated light that came, and like my whole life was different, and I felt this like, expansion or anything. It was just like, okay, so now I know. And that's what plant medicine can do, is it can help you understand why, but you still have to do the work and make the change.
So can you talk about the experience of doing an ayahuasca ceremony? Because I've watched the, I think it was Aubrey Marcus's video online. And I mean, I certainly listened to enough podcasts about it, but how does it work? Like, I mean, I know it's individual for everybody. I mean, so you mix up this brew, you're in Peru, you're in sort of a temple, or you're with some, shaman, and you take it, and then what happens? Because I'll tell you why I asked, because I mean, I've done acid and mushroom lots of times when I was younger, and I think of how in not the right headspace I was to be able to, I mean, it was fun. I went to see Marilyn Manson all frigged up on mushrooms. I mean, that was one of the best times of my life, actually. Yeah. But I mean, I certainly wasn't doing it. I was doing it for recreational party enjoyment, not any type of spiritual journey. Right. So, I mean, like, how does it help you have these insights, or just, I guess, tell me more about it.
So if you want like a really scientific approach to exactly what happens when they make the medicine and it goes into the body, I recommend you listening to Cosmic Smith Radio podcast, episode number 3 with Kevin Root. And he's an incredible medicine man in the sense of medicine with Western medicine and with Peruvian medicine. So he can explain exactly physically what's happening in the body. But I can give you more of like my own, and I've learned to not pretend that I can explain it better, because I'm going to massacre it. But this is what happens is there's a root from a tree that's twisted. It's ayahuasca itself. And then they take a plant that has DMT in it, and they mix them together in this brew. And we naturally make DMT in our body. And I have to not go too deep with this because I don't want to get it incorrectly. And if we just ingested DMT, our body wouldn't accept it. It would need something that would allow our bodies to absorb it. So
I think that we have some enzyme in our bodies that like breaks it down or something.
Exactly. So when those two are put together and we drink it, then it's able to absorb in the body. And as soon as the medicine, so in ayahuasca is a spirit we call grandmother. And grandmother is her intelligence in this plant, so plants of spirits that have deep intelligence, is billions of years past anything we can comprehend. So when we understand the consciousness of it and the intelligence of it, so as soon as we drink it, it instantly goes in the body and starts seeking out things to heal, which is super fascinating, spiritually, mentally. And what it does is it triggers you into going through the wormhole, and then you're shown your work. So you set an intention, you're very specific. I remember one specific ceremony, I had like 15 things I was asking to know. And the medicine hit me super fast that night. And like, I'd only been like 10 minutes. It usually takes an hour for it to kind of get in the body. And in 5 minutes, she showed me everything I wanted to know. And then I had like 4.5 more hours of experience with her. So she was going to show me what she wanted me to know. And, they say it's wrong to kind of share your journey. So I'll just kind of briefly share, but like what I was able to do in that ceremony was experience my own death. I gave birth to myself, and then I expanded into like my highest self. And expanding consciously into like the knowing of what we're actually capable of is very painful. There's discomfort in the body. There may be throwing up. There may be whatever. And that's the whole idea, is to rid the bodies of these things. And I was able to understand like what is potentially possible in me. And I experienced some level of nirvana, experienced world peace, experienced true love. I also had a spiritual orgasm. That was one ceremony.
That's a good night's work. Jeez.
It was one ceremony. It took me weeks to recover from this. And then I woke up on the cold, hard floor of the ceremony room, terrified, because my life was so far away from where I wanted it to be. And it took me a lot of time, nutrition, and just space. And that's why having really good shamans, like, I don't just recommend getting on a plane and going to Peru and doing this work. You are going to face the shit that is inside of you. And you must make sure that you have really amazing shamans that are going to offer a nurturing environment. So there are places in America that you can do it. There are places in Canada that you can do it. You want to look at the legal aspect of like what you're comfortable with, finding a church, all that. But you're capable of experiencing like full potential, but you're also capable of experiencing the deep darkness within you. And with me suffering with a lot of depression, I had like 15 ceremonies in a row that were just, were hell. They were super, super hard, and they were super amazing and like so intense. And it was bringing out all my depression. It was bringing out all my anxiety. And I finally had to get to a point where I had to like stop doing the medicine, because I was like, I'm going like every month, and I'm like going. And the spirit of ayahuasca doesn't want you to get addicted. So she makes it harder and harder and harder to drink each time you do it. And she's usually going to take you into a deeper level of realm. So it's nothing that she wants you to get addicted to. But there finally comes a point when you're like, okay, I got to start using my own medicine, because we all have our own medicine. But yeah, I mean, it's also not the path of like, and I've heard this, and there's varying degrees. Like, if you want to try it and you're here for like the experience, I get it. I totally get it. But like, for most, once you start this path, it's a path you walk for the rest of your life. So with some levels, there's lots of different plant medicines. Some are not psychedelic, but some are healing. Some bring in protection in the body for your own medicine. Like, there's so many ways to go. So if you're interested and it speaks to you, definitely start doing research. And Joe Rogan has a great movie out on YouTube, and Aubrey Marcus is great. He's how I got into this whole thing. And it's fascinating. You can always reach out and ask me questions, but you're going to experience the most immense beauty, and you're going to experience your immense darkness. So it's, and we don't talk about that enough because we don't want to scare people away, but it's the truth.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something really appealing to me about experiencing that darkness. Like, I kind of want to know what's in there. Sometimes I feel like I don't even know how much darkness I'm capable of or have inside me, because it's not, I don't think I have the tools to even begin to explore it. I actually, it's, now that I'm saying it out loud, it's not even something I've really thought about that much.
Well, it's not really about having a tool. It's about surrendering. So
right.
This whole thing. So, for me, the anxiety really lessened, and the depression like virtually stopped essentially when I started allowing myself to lay in a space of feeling my pain. So for me, when the depression would come, I would do anything, drink or shop or whatever to try and not feel it. Well, essentially, it's just about laying in it.
That's really interesting, because I've been telling people that a lot lately too. Like, I remember when I would try to stop drinking, and it would suck bad, right? Like, I mean, this is awful. Like, and it would be like the first day would be fine, the second day would be fine, and then I'd drive by the pub, or I would stop home from work, and I'm like, God, I just want to be able to do that again, and blah, blah, blah. And I never let myself, like, where does this take me if I just let myself experience it? I was like, this must be avoided at all costs, because I don't know where it's going to take me. Like, fuck. And it's so interesting. So I was talking to a guy who's trying to quit drinking. I was saying that to him, like, man, because for me, when I stopped, there was so much goodness that came out of it, but there was pain. There was pain that I hadn't let myself experience with Cindy's death and all that kind of stuff. And just anxiety and all those feelings that I never really felt before. And I was talking to this guy, and I was saying to him, like, he's trying to quit drinking. And I said that you've got to see where it takes you, man. Like, because that's, I think I don't know, maybe that's how you find out what you need to work on, or
Well, and really for me, that's what it was all about, is like my whole life, I had avoided that at all costs. So when you finally face it, then you're able to like feel and be in a deeper space. It's almost like an expansion of the body. Okay, so now she's bigger inside. Now she's capable of more inside. And then like the more I allowed myself to feel, and the more I allowed myself to feel, and my shaman just kept saying, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this, you know? And she's like, just keep coming back. Just keep coming back. And it was like 2 years of hell for her. And then probably 6 full years where she hasn't had depression in like 8 years or 10 years. And she had a father who killed himself. So I get that piece, but it's for me, and I say this with a massive disclaimer, because most people are not ready for this. So this isn't something for you to necessarily try or do. And it's definitely not something that you should not follow your doctor's orders with, because we have to be super careful with this conversation. But like for me, when I'm suicidal, it is my greatest teacher. And before I would do everything I could not to feel it. And for me, in my own experience, it is my greatest teacher. So when I'm able to sit in those feelings of deepness, and I have an amazing father who I can call, and he's like, I'm suicidal. And I've taught the people in my life how to hold space. And he's like, can I make you some tea? And let me go through it. It is there to teach me something. It's there for me to feel something. And the way that my body knows how to process those deep level of feelings is to want to be suicidal. So it wasn't about me wanting to kill myself. It's about me not knowing how to feel what I'm experiencing. And that's just for me. And I've done a hell of a lot of work to be able to get there. And I don't recommend you just trying it, but just being aware of like, sometimes when we have darkness, it's our teacher. And if we can have support and dip our toe in the pool of pain rather than like, you know, cannonball into it, and like slowly learn to like understand what it's experiencing. And that's what plant medicine does. But you have to have support.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me more about combo. Right. So how does it work?
Combo is amazing. So combo is not a psychedelic. Combo is a purgative. So the goal of combo is to get you to purge, whether it's, you know, diarrhea or throw up or shakes or yawns or crying or whatever. So we have trauma stored in the body, and there's amazing peptides. Okay, so we go to the Amazon and we find this frog. It's called the Scylla medusa, large leaf tree frog. And it comes to us on a stick, and we milk it, which sounds kind of crazy. And we take the venom from the back of a gland and from their legs, and then we set them free. And it's a really strong secretion or poison. So in a ceremonial aspect, we'll get together and we'll set an intention, and I'll actually burn your skin with a stick. And then I lay the frog poison in the burn. And within about 5 minutes, you're having physical symptoms of a lot of discomfort. So you have like 10 minutes of the flu is essentially what's happening. And the goal is to get you to vomit and to go to the bathroom or do whatever, and rid the body of the panema. So the energy that keeps you in depression or funk or bad luck, or if you want to step into your higher selves. I've watched people shift into much higher levels of consciousness. And I go to retreats. Like I just went to M1, which is a mastermind that helps people reach $1 million. I just was invited up there to do combo for people. Not a lot of people like working through depression up there, but it was more like wanting to step into higher self. So there's lots of uses for this medicine, and the whole ceremony lasts an hour from start to finish. And then you have some time to recover, and then usually you feel amazing. So the body's like in some level of peace and ease. It's balanced the hormones. They're using this medicine for depression, anxiety, addiction, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, type 1 diabetes. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. So it's really fascinating. And it's spelled Kambo if you want to check it out. There's a lot of great information out there.
So but it's purely physical. Like, I mean, it's spiritual, I guess, in some way, but it's causing a physical reaction in the body?
Well,
or how would you describe it?
It is, but it's not purely physical.
Yeah, sure.
It's super spiritual and very mental and so it actually has a peptide that passes through the blood-brain barrier that goes deep within us spiritually and kind of scoops stuff out. So, you know, whether you're not like processing it like you would in ayahuasca, where there's no visual, the body's still ridding itself of these traumas and energies. So there is a very big physicalness to it, but I've worked on a couple of my greatest teachers lately, and to watch their experience, like they're okay. So they're sick and they're still like, okay, so now I can feel it's actually like cellularly hitting me. Okay, now it's in like the endocrine system, and like where they're able to feel, because they're so connected with their bodies, like what it's actually cleansing. And then for hours afterward, we like sat and talked and kind of went through the verbal purge, and it was profound.
Wow, that is amazing. How do you milk a frog?
Right. You tie it up,
Yeah.
and because of the stress of being tied up the way it is, it just secretes because it feels like it's in danger.
Oh yeah. Interesting. Wow. I don't know. I feel like I could talk to you for like 3 days.
I know. We do this every time. We're like, we'll just have to do like a 3-hour podcast one of these times.
Yeah, we will. We will. So anything else? What else should we talk about? I mean, I know we're at about an hour. Is there anything else we have?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's like last time we talked about like we should have another podcast and talk about, don't shit on yourself, but the trials and tribulations of being a woman and then being a dad of a woman. I mean, there's so many ways we can go with this, but I do hope that we can share more time together, and I definitely want to have you on mine again. And
that would be great. It's interesting you say that, because with the whole this whole Me Too campaign, my wife and I have been talking about that a lot, and it's funny how she's definitely on the, I don't know if feminist is the right word. Let's just say the feminist, what you'd consider to be the feminist end of the spectrum. And I would say I started on the opposite side of the spectrum, which is not to say none of this stuff happened. It's not that, but it's amazing. And I guess what I wanted to share, we can get into it maybe on another podcast, but what's been really interesting for me, and I think is important for people to know, is how much, like, I feel like for me to come to some sort of opinion about that, or I need to talk about it 100 more times. You know what I mean? And I think people should know that. Like, it's amazing how long it can take to get clarity on a specific topic, and so we might start and we might debate it quite vigorously. And then, and then I'll think about it and I'll say, well, God, I can kind of see, like, for example, admitting, it took me a long time to admit how profoundly different a woman's experience can be than a man's. You know what I mean? My wife was telling me what it was like, and I'm like, come on, as if, and I'm going to start asking women I meet, and I'm like, you ever guys ever physically get in your space? And oh yeah, it happens, all quite frequently, not every day, but it's like, really? Wow.
Well, but there's such a bigger conversation that's starting to happen here, and everybody's so caught in the first layer of it. Yeah. So, we have really incredibly powerful organizations on this planet that control everything. Hollywood is no different. And to think that one man and I'm not degrading or disrespecting what has happened to these women, but there are societies of people, secret societies of people that still do sexual sacrifice, that still do, of men, women, and children. That's happening today, right now. And if you think that we're at the top of the food chain, we are not at the top of the food chain. Our energy is, every time we're in strife, every time we're in whatever, and, I'm sure I'll receive some level of dark shit today from talking about this, but I think it's Corey Haim or Corey Feldman, whatever one of them, was saying what's actually happening with pedophilia in Hollywood. And people know about it. Harvey Weinstein is the icing on the cake. And for us to just think, oh, okay, yeah, me too. I get it. And it's a conversation that needs to happen, but wake the fuck up. We have huge things happening. To trade your soul to be in movies. Yeah. Angelina Jolie talks about it. And that's been a thing that's been really interesting. There's a sacrifice, there's a ritual, a blood ritual that has to happen for that to happen. There's way deeper shit going on this planet than just one man sexually harassing. And it does count, and it is part, and it's valid. And those women need to be heard and seen. And I get that. But I have a lot of my friends that are men that are coaches that are coming out and talking about this. And they're saying, yeah, me too. I have been harassed too. And having these conversations, but in reality, the conversation is so much bigger.
I agree.
It's so
I
much
agree.
Bigger. Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, thanks so much. That was just an awesome conversation.
I know. There's so much we can always talk about. I do hope you'll be a guest on my show again too.
Oh,
and
God,
your episode airs this Friday. So.
Oh, does it? Cool.
Yeah. So I'll definitely.
I can't wait.
Have you in it? Yeah, I know. It's going to be awesome. So I do. Yeah, I hope I come and visit you again. And we talked about co-creating.
Yeah.
So you guys will hear us a little bit more.
Okay, awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
What an incredibly cool cat. I really, really love talking to her. And maybe the next time after I talk to her, I will have done an ayahuasca trip. I'm not sure if experience. We'll see. I'm really interested in it. And a lot of it was piqued by my first conversation with Rhonda on her podcast, which I will obviously include in the show notes page. However, I'm going to end this episode like I end every single episode, and I'm not going to sing anymore, but that's by saying, listen, if you've struggled, I want you to know that I've struggled too. And like, fuck, I have struggled. And if you ever want to talk to me, I will not judge you. Those words can change the world, and the world is changed in every interaction. So consider the fact that you have stories to tell, you have challenges that you've overcome, and when you start sharing them in the service of other people, you will unleash a whole different life for yourself. You'll build new connections, you'll help people heal, and you'll reveal to yourself that you're incredibly powerful. And that is a great way to spend time, and I highly suggest you do it. Even though it's scary, it's more than worth it. 1,000 times more than worth it. So we will see you next time. And there are so many more awesome conversations to come on the Mental Health Warriors podcast. In fact, I don't think they're ever going to stop. So peace out, everybody.